$2.3 million. That's the number that appeared on the courtroom screen. That's what my husband had been hiding in a cryptocurrency wallet while he stood before a judge, hand raised, swearing under oath that he was bankrupt. I watched his face from across the room. Marcus was wearing his navy blue suit, the Italian wool one with the custom tailoring he'd bought for his brother's wedding. His hair was freshly cut. His posture was perfect. He looked like a man who expected to win, because Marcus always expected to win. But not today. The moment those numbers appeared on the screen, I watched the color drain from his face. His jaw went slack. His hands, which had been resting casually on the defense table, suddenly gripped the edge so hard his knuckles turned white. The judge's voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Thompson, would you care to explain these undisclosed assets?" Marcus opened his mouth. For the first time in the 15 years I'd known him, nothing came out. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded in my lap to hide the trembling, and I let myself feel it. Not joy exactly, something deeper, something I'd been chasing for 18 months through legal documents and blockchain records and sleepless nights. Vindication. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what that moment meant, to really understand it, you need to know how I got there. You need to know about the marriage, the lies, the woman named Veronica, and a yellow post-it note with 12 words that changed everything. My name is Danielle. I'm 38 years old, and this is the story of how I caught my husband hiding $2.3 million, and how I took it all. I met Marcus when I was 23 years old, at a networking event for young professionals in Chicago. It was one of those stuffy hotel ballroom affairs where everyone wears name tags and pretends to be more successful than they are. I was fresh out of my master's program, trying to break into nonprofit management, wearing a blazer I'd found at a consignment shop and heels that were already destroying my feet. Marcus was different from everyone else in that room. While other people talked at me about their startups and their 5-year plans, Marcus asked questions, real questions. He wanted to know what I cared about, what made me angry, what I dreamed about when I let myself dream big. He was 30 years old, already established in fintech, wearing a watch that probably cost more than my rent. But he didn't make me feel small. He made me feel seen. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number. By the end of the month, we were dating exclusively. By the end of the year, I was in love with him in that dizzy, all-consuming way you can only love someone when you're young and haven't learned to protect yourself yet. We got married 4 years later, in a small ceremony at a botanical garden on a perfect October afternoon. I wore my grandmother's pearls. He cried during his vows. Our families sat together in white folding chairs and watched us promise forever to each other. I believed every word. Here's what I didn't understand then. I was falling in love with a performance. Marcus was always performing. He performed for his colleagues, for his family, for strangers at parties. And he performed for me, the devoted husband, the generous provider, the man who had everything under control. The first time I noticed the cracks, I told myself I was imagining things. That's what you do when you want the story to stay intact. You explain away the inconsistencies. You rationalize the red flags. You convince yourself that the person you married is the person they pretend to be. But the cracks kept appearing, and eventually they became impossible to ignore. It started with a credit card I wasn't supposed to find. We'd been married about 6 years at that point, settled into the comfortable rhythm of a stable life. Nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the garage. The kind of existence that looks perfect from the outside. I was searching through Marcus's home office for a warranty card. Our dishwasher had broken, and I needed the purchase information. His office was the one room in the house that felt off-limits to me. Not explicitly forbidden, but he'd made it clear through subtle comments and body language that this was his space, his domain. I rarely went in there. The filing cabinet was organized with Marcus's typical precision, labeled folders, color-coded tabs, everything in its place. I was flipping through the household section when my fingers stopped on an envelope I'd never seen before. A credit card statement. Platinum card, in Marcus's name only. I stood there in the afternoon light that streamed through the window blinds, scanning the charges. A restaurant downtown I'd never heard of. A hotel room 30 minutes from our house. Why would he need a hotel room? And then a jewelry store purchase, $1,200. I hadn't received any jewelry. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I photographed the statement with my phone, slid it back into the envelope exactly as I'd found it, and closed the filing cabinet. That night, Marcus came home from work in a good mood. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, helped me set the table for dinner. We sat across from each other eating the pasta I'd made, and I watched him chew and swallow and smile at me like nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I found something in your office today, a credit card I didn't recognize." Marcus didn't look up from his plate. "That's my business expense card, babe. The company reimburses me for client dinners and stuff. You know how corporate accounting works. They need everything separate." I didn't know how corporate accounting worked. That was part of the problem. Marcus handled all our finances. The bank accounts, the investments, the retirement funds. All of it flowed through his hands. I saw the big picture, the summary he gave me each month, but the details were his domain. "What about the jewelry store charge?" I pressed. $1,200? Now he looked up. His expression was patient, slightly amused, the way you'd look at a child who'd asked a silly question. "Client gift, his wife's birthday. The company has a whole budget for relationship management." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Why, were you hoping I'd bought you something?" He smiled, that easy, charming smile that had won me over at that networking event 15 years ago. I smiled back. "Maybe." "I can arrange that," he said. "Anniversary's coming up." We finished dinner. We watched television together on the couch. He fell asleep with his head on my shoulder, and I sat there in the blue glow of the screen, thinking about hotel rooms and jewelry I'd never seen. I told myself it was nothing. Corporate expenses, client relationships. The explanation made sense. Of course it did. Marcus always had explanations that made sense. But something had shifted inside me that day. A seed of doubt had been planted, and seeds, once planted, have a way of growing whether you want them to or not. 3 months later, I woke at 3 a.m. to an empty bed. The sheets on Marcus's side were cold. I lay there for a moment, listening to the silence of the house, wondering if he'd gone to the bathroom or downstairs for water. But the minutes passed, and he didn't return. I reached for my phone on the nightstand to check the time and noticed Marcus's phone sitting there too. That was unusual. He normally slept with his phone under his pillow, kept it within arm's reach at all times, like it contained state secrets. Seeing it unattended felt wrong, somehow, like finding a door unlocked that should have been bolted. I picked it up just to check the time. The screen lit up with a notification, a text message from someone named V. "Can't wait to see you Thursday. Same place?" My whole body went cold. I stared at those words, reading them over and over, trying to find an innocent explanation. V could be anyone, a colleague, a client, maybe Vincent from his office. He mentioned a Vincent sometimes. Same place? What place? Why was someone texting my husband at 3 a.m.? I heard footsteps on the stairs. Quickly, I set the phone down exactly where it had been and closed my eyes, feigning sleep. Marcus slipped back into bed. I felt the mattress dip under his weight, felt him settle against his pillow. His breathing was careful, controlled, the breathing of someone trying not to wake a sleeping partner. I lay there until dawn, not sleeping, running through every possibility in my mind. By the time the sun came up, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. The was probably work-related. The late-night text was probably just a different time zone. The fact that my husband had been out of bed at 3 a.m. was probably nothing. I was so good at convincing myself. I'd been doing it for years without even realizing it. But the doubt was growing now, and I couldn't stop it. The Miami trip happened 2 months later. Marcus announced it over breakfast on a Sunday morning. Sunlight was streaming through our kitchen windows, falling across the marble countertop and the fresh fruit I'd arranged in a bowl. Everything looked golden and beautiful, the kind of domestic scene you'd see in a home magazine. "I've got a conference next week," he said, stirring his coffee. "Miami, 3 days. It's a big industry thing, could be good for my career." "That sounds great," I said. "What's the conference?" He named something technical sounding, full of buzzwords about fintech and innovation. I nodded along, not really understanding but not wanting to admit it. "I'll miss you," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "You could come, but it'll be all meetings and networking, boring stuff." "I'll survive," I said. "Bring me back something nice." He grinned. "Always." The morning he left for Miami, I watched him pack his suitcase. He did it himself, which was unusual. Marcus normally left that kind of thing to me. He selected his clothes carefully. Nicer shirts than he usually wore to conferences, swimming trunks, the good cologne I'd given him for his birthday. The cologne was the thing that stuck with me. He'd said he was saving it for special occasions. A work conference was special enough to warrant the good cologne? For 2 days, I told myself not to dig, not to snoop, not to verify. Trust is the foundation of a marriage, and if I started checking up on him, what did that say about us? On the 3rd day, I broke. I sat at my laptop in the quiet of our empty house and typed the name of the conference into Google. Nothing came up. I tried different variations, different search terms. The conference Marcus claimed to be attending did not appear to exist. My hands were trembling now. I opened Instagram. Marcus didn't use it much, but his colleagues did. I searched for the conference hashtag. Nothing. I searched for Miami tech events that week. Nothing that matched. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I remembered that Marcus was still logged into his email on the old iPad we kept in the kitchen. I'd never snooped before, never even been tempted. But something had broken loose inside me, some last restraint, and I needed to know. The inbox loaded slowly. My finger hovered over the screen. This was a line I couldn't uncross. I crossed it. The email was right there, 3 days old. A flight confirmation from United Airlines, business class to Miami. And below the passenger details, the trip summary. Hotel booking at the Setai, a luxury resort I recognized from magazine ads. Booking for 2 guests. 2 guests. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there at the kitchen table as the afternoon light shifted across the room, feeling something cold and hard settle into my chest. My husband was in Miami with someone else, staying at a resort, using our money, or money I'd thought was ours, to fund a vacation with someone he hadn't told me about. The woman who sat down at that table trusted her husband. The woman who finally stood up, hours later when the sun had set and the kitchen had gone dark, understood that she'd been living in a carefully constructed lie. But here's the thing, I didn't confront him, not then. When Marcus came home from Miami, tanned and cheerful, smelling of coconut sunscreen and contentment, I greeted him at the door with a smile. I asked about the conference. I listened to his elaborate descriptions of panels and networking sessions that had never happened. I watched his face as he lied to me with complete confidence, complete ease, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I started paying attention to everything. Over the next year, I became a silent observer in my own marriage. I noticed things I'd been trained not to notice. The way Marcus angled his phone away from me when texting. The business trips that seemed to multiply. The new clothes that appeared in his closet, designer labels, expensive cuts that I never saw him purchase. The careful way he managed money, always keeping me informed of the big picture while hiding the details. I documented everything, photographs of receipts, screenshots of calendar entries, a secret folder on my phone that grew thicker by the month. But I still didn't have proof of anything concrete, just patterns, just suspicions, just the growing certainty that the man I'd married was not the man I was living with. The breaking point came on an October evening, when the leaves outside our window had turned orange and red, and the air had that crisp autumn bite. Marcus asked me to sit down in the living room. He was wearing his gray cashmere sweater, the one I'd bought him for Christmas 2 years ago, and his expression was arranged into something meant to look sympathetic. The slight furrow of the brow, the soft downturn of the mouth, I recognized it as a performance. But I sat down anyway. "Danielle," he said, taking my hands in his, "we need to talk." I waited. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage," he continued, "about where we are, where we're going. And I think we've grown apart. I think we want different things now." My chest was tight, but I kept my face neutral. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, I think we should separate." He squeezed my hands like he was delivering bad news gently. "I've already talked to a lawyer. I wanted to make this as easy as possible for both of us." He reached into the pocket of his sweater and pulled out a folder, beige, official looking. He slid it across the coffee table toward me. I opened it and saw the words that would define the next 18 months of my life. Bankruptcy declaration. The pages were dense with financial statements, line after line of losses, negative balances, red ink everywhere. According to these documents, Marcus's investments had collapsed, his business ventures had failed. We were not just divorcing, we were broke. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice was perfect, regretful, sincere. "I didn't want to worry you while I was trying to fix it, but there's nothing left, Danielle. I wish there was something I could give you, but there's just nothing." I stared at the papers. My mind was racing, cataloging every expensive thing I'd seen him buy in the last year. The new suits, the luxury trips, the Tesla I'd spotted him driving last month when I was running errands and he didn't know I was nearby. This man was not broke. I knew it in my bones. This was just another performance, his most ambitious one yet. "I'll need time to review all of this," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, distant. "Of course, take all the time you need." He stood up, sliding his hands into his pockets. "I'll stay at my brother's place for a while, give you space." He kissed me on the forehead, a final patronizing gesture, and walked out the front door. I heard his car start in the driveway, saw the headlights sweep across the window as he backed out. Then I was alone in the house I'd thought was ours, holding bankruptcy papers that I knew were fake, trying to figure out how to prove it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, the blue glow of the screen the only light in the room, and I started making a plan. The first thing I needed was help, real help, from someone who understood financial fraud. Someone who could see through the numbers the way I couldn't. I thought of Keisha immediately. Keisha Williams had been my roommate freshman year of college. We'd bonded over late-night study sessions and terrible cafeteria food and the shared experience of being Black women navigating predominantly white academic spaces. She was brilliant in a way that intimidated most people. Razor-sharp analytical mind, perfect recall for numbers, zero tolerance for bullshit. After college, she'd become a forensic accountant. She worked for a firm that specialized in fraud investigation, the kind of place that got called in when companies suspected executives of embezzlement. If anyone could see through Marcus's fake bankruptcy, it was her. I called her the next morning from my car, parked in a grocery store lot so I could have privacy. "Danielle?" Her voice was warm but alert. "It's been months. What's going on?" I told her everything. The credit card, the Miami trip, the mysterious V, the Tesla I'd spotted, and now the bankruptcy papers that didn't add up. When I finished, there was a long pause. "That son of a bitch," Keisha said finally. "I knew something was off about him. Remember what I said when you first started dating?" I did remember. She'd met Marcus once at a birthday dinner I'd organized, and afterward she'd pulled me aside. "He seems charming," she'd said carefully. "Almost too charming. Watch out for the ones who never let the mask slip." I'd laughed it off, called her paranoid, told her she was too suspicious because of her job. "I should have listened," I said now. "Yeah, well, you're listening now." I could hear her moving around, papers shuffling. "Listen, can you meet me? There's something I want to show you." We met at a coffee shop near downtown, one of those artisanal places with exposed brick and plants everywhere. Keisha was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her laptop open. She'd always been beautiful in a severe kind of way: high cheekbones, close-cropped natural hair, glasses that made her look like a particularly stylish professor. "Okay," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer." "Go ahead." "Did Marcus ever talk to you about cryptocurrency?" The question caught me off guard. "Crypto? Like Bitcoin?" "Like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, like any of the 1,000 different digital currencies that exist now." I frowned, thinking back. He mentioned it a few times, years ago, said it was the future of money or something. I didn't really pay attention. It sounded too complicated. Keisha nodded slowly. "That's what I was afraid of. Listen, I need to explain something to you, and I need you to really understand it because it might be the key to everything." She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a chart that looked like abstract art, lines and numbers and colored bars that meant nothing to me. "This is a blockchain," she said. "It's essentially a public ledger that records every single cryptocurrency transaction. When someone sends Bitcoin to someone else, that transaction gets logged here permanently. You can see it. I can see it. Anyone can see it. If it's public, how does that help him hide money? Because the only thing that's public is the wallet address. Think of it like a bank account number, except it's just a random string of letters and numbers, completely anonymous. You can see that a wallet exists. You can see exactly how much money is in it. You can trace every transaction in and out. But unless you know who owns that wallet, you can't connect it to a real person." I was starting to understand. So Marcus could have a wallet somewhere with millions of dollars, and nobody would know it was his. Exactly. Keisha leaned forward, her glasses glinting in the afternoon light. Cryptocurrency is the perfect tool for hiding assets in a divorce. It's not stored in a bank. It doesn't show up on traditional financial statements. And if you don't know it exists, you can't ask for it. How do I prove he has it? That's the tricky part. She pulled up another screen. To access a crypto wallet, you need something called a seed phrase. It's usually 12 or 24 random words, arranged in a specific order. Those words are like a master password. Anyone who has them can access the wallet from anywhere in the world. So I need to find his seed phrase. Keisha nodded. If he has crypto, and my gut says he does, that seed phrase is written down somewhere. People don't memorize them. They're too important. He's got it stored somewhere safe, somewhere he can get to it if he needs to. I thought about all the places Marcus kept things: his home office, his car, the storage unit we'd rented during our kitchen renovation 3 years ago, the storage unit he'd told me he closed but never actually did. I think I know where to start looking, I said. Keisha reached across the table and put her hand on my arm. Danielle, I need you to understand something. If you find evidence that he's hiding assets, this becomes a fraud case, not just a divorce, criminal fraud. Are you ready for that? I thought about all the years I'd spent believing his lies, all the money I'd never seen, all the questions I'd never asked. I'm ready, I said. The search began that weekend. I told myself I was being systematic, careful, like a professional. But honestly, I was running on anger and adrenaline, tearing through my own house like a woman possessed. The basement came first. Concrete walls, exposed pipes, the musty smell of a space that never quite got enough ventilation. Marcus had boxes stacked down there from years of accumulated life. Old tax returns, expired warranties, electronics we'd replaced but never thrown away. I worked through them methodically, photographed everything before I touched it so I could put things back exactly as they'd been. I found plenty of financial documents, but nothing I didn't already know about, nothing that pointed to hidden crypto. The garage was next, more boxes. A filing cabinet that was supposed to contain car maintenance records, but was mostly stuffed with old magazines. Behind the toolbox, I found a small lockbox. My heart hammered as I picked it open, but it only contained our marriage license and some expired passports. By Sunday evening, I was exhausted as well as discouraged. My back ached from crawling around on concrete floors. My fingers were dusty and paper-cut, and I hadn't found anything. I slumped at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop without really seeing it. Maybe Keisha was wrong. Maybe there was no crypto. Maybe Marcus really had just made bad investments and lost everything. But then I remembered the Tesla, the resort in Miami, the jewelry store charges on that hidden credit card. No one who was actually broke lived like that. The money was somewhere, I just had to find it. And that's when I remembered the storage unit. I'd forgotten about it completely until that moment. 3 years ago, during our kitchen renovation, we'd rented a climate-controlled space to store some of the furniture. When the renovation was done, Marcus had said he'd handle closing it out. I'd never thought about it again. I pulled up our joint bank account statements, the ones Marcus hadn't bothered to cut me off from yet, and searched for the storage company name. There it was. Monthly payments of $79 still being withdrawn. For 3 years straight. He'd never closed the unit. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. I drove to Clean Space Storage on the outskirts of the city, my hands tight on the steering wheel, my heart racing with something between hope and fear. The facility was exactly what you'd expect. Rows of orange doors, fluorescent lights, the smell of dust and old furniture. I found Unit 247 at the end of a long hallway and punched in the code. Marcus's birthday, because he'd always been predictable in the small things. The lock clicked. The door rolled up. Inside was a jumble of furniture and boxes from the renovation. The armchair my mother had given us as a wedding gift. A lamp I'd always hated. A treadmill that had been temporarily stored here and never came back. And in the corner, a plastic storage bin labeled Work Files. I pulled it into the light, my hands trembling. Inside were folders, notebooks, a few external hard drives. I started going through them one by one, photographing everything, looking for anything that seemed out of place. The first notebook was useless, meeting notes from years ago, phone numbers for people I'd never heard of. The second was more of the same. But the third notebook, it was a black moleskin, the kind Marcus always carried. Worn leather cover, pages slightly yellowed at the edges. I flipped through it, scanning his familiar handwriting. Reminders, to-do lists, sketches of ideas. And then, near the back, a yellow post-it note stuck to one of the pages. 12 words, written in Marcus's cramped script. Garden, trumpet, hollow, river, symbol, legacy, mountain, bridge, eclipse, fortune, crystal, anchor. I stared at those words for a long time. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I knew exactly what I was looking at, a seed phrase. I photographed the page 3 times, making sure each image was clear. Then I took the notebook. I took the hard drives too. Who knew what else might be on them? I locked up the storage unit and drove straight to Keisha's apartment, breaking at least 3 traffic laws along the way. She met me at the door in yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt, looking like she'd been working from home. "You found something," she said. It wasn't a question. I found everything. 20 minutes later, we were hunched over her computer, a massive desktop setup with 3 monitors that she used for her forensic work. She'd entered the 12 words into a wallet recovery program, and now we were waiting for it to connect to the blockchain. "This might take a minute," she said. "It has to scan for matching addresses." I couldn't sit still. I paced behind her chair, my arms wrapped around myself, watching the progress bar inch forward. Then the screen changed. A wallet address appeared, a long string of letters and numbers that meant nothing to me. But below it, in large green text, was a number that meant everything. Balance, 47.83 BTC. Keisha clicked a button to convert it to dollars. $2,347,891.42. I grabbed the back of her chair because my legs had stopped working. The room was spinning. $2.3 million. All those years of clipping coupons and shopping sales and being told we couldn't afford a nice vacation. All those conversations about being careful with money, about living within our means, about putting off purchases until we were more financially secure. And the whole time, he had $2.3 million hidden in a digital wallet. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Oh my God, Keisha." She turned to look at me. Her face was grim, but there was a fire in her eyes I recognized from our college days. The look she got when she was about to destroy someone's argument in a debate. "Danielle," she said quietly, "your husband isn't broke. He's a multimillionaire, and he's been hiding it from you this whole time." I lowered myself into a chair, my whole body shaking. I felt like I might throw up, or scream, or laugh, maybe all 3 at once. "What do I do now?" I asked. "Now," Keisha said, turning back to her computer, "we follow the money, because I guarantee you he's been spending it, and every transaction is going to be evidence." She was right. The blockchain told a story, and it was a damning one. Over the next few hours, Keisha traced the transaction history of Marcus's wallet. Bitcoin didn't just sit there. It flowed in and out, converted to dollars through various exchanges, spent on things in the real world. She found payments to a Tesla dealership. That explained the car I'd seen. She found payments to travel agencies. That explained the vacations, including the Miami trip with whoever V was. She found payments to restaurants, hotels, a luxury apartment building downtown. And then she found the jewelry store. Over $60,000 in purchases over the past 2 years. Diamonds, gold, the kind of things a man buys for a woman he's trying to impress. I hadn't received any jewelry. "Danielle," Keisha said slowly, pointing at the screen, "these weren't for you." I knew that already. I'd known it in some part of me for years. But seeing it confirmed, in cold financial data on a computer screen, was different. It made it real in a way I couldn't deny anymore. "I need to find out who she is," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, flat, determined, empty of the emotion I knew I should be feeling. Keisha nodded. "I have a friend who does private investigation work, discreet, thorough. If Marcus has a girlfriend, she'll find her." "Do it," I said. "Find her." The investigator's name was Monica, and she worked fast. Within a week, she'd traced the jewelry purchases to a specific store on Oak Street. Within 2 weeks, she'd connected those purchases to credit card receipts that led to a name: Veronica Hayes. I looked at the file Monica had compiled, sitting alone in my living room on a Tuesday night. The house was quiet. The only light came from the lamp beside my chair, casting a warm yellow glow across the photographs in my lap. Veronica was 31 years old, blonde, pretty in that generic Instagram-filtered way that looks the same as 1,000 other women. She worked in marketing for some wellness brand, the kind that sold overpriced supplements and meditation apps. Her social media was full of yoga poses and inspirational quotes and pictures of herself living what looked like an extremely comfortable life. And on her neck, in photo after photo, was a diamond necklace that matched the purchase records from the jewelry store. I sat with those photographs for a long time. I thought I would cry. I thought I would rage. Instead, I felt something unexpected: clarity. For years, I'd been tangled in confusion and self-doubt. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid? Was my marriage really falling apart? Or was I just looking for problems? Now I knew. There was no confusion left. My husband was a liar. He'd hidden millions of dollars. He'd bought another woman jewelry with money he claimed not to have. He'd looked me in the eye and told me we were broke while living a secret life of luxury. And now I was going to destroy him. The next call I made was to Sandra Okonkwo, my divorce lawyer. Sandra's office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower downtown, with a view of the lake that probably impressed most clients. The furniture was tasteful and expensive: white walls, modern art, a desk that looked like it cost more than my car. Sandra herself was a small woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her natural hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. But there was nothing small about her presence. When she walked into a room, people paid attention. When she spoke, they listened. She'd spent 20 years as a federal prosecutor before transitioning to private practice, and she'd built a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when circumstances required it. I'd hired her on the recommendation of a friend who'd been through a difficult divorce with a corporate lawyer husband. "She fights dirty," my friend had told me, "and that's exactly what you need." I spread my evidence across Sandra's desk: the seed phrase, the wallet balance, the transaction history, the photographs of Veronica wearing $60,000 worth of jewelry my husband had bought her. Sandra went through it all with the methodical precision of someone who'd seen this kind of thing before. She asked questions. She took notes. She made calls to experts while I sat there, feeling like a witness to the dismantling of my own life. When she finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me directly. "This is significant," she said. "Not just significant for the divorce, significant enough that we're looking at potential criminal charges. Perjury for the false bankruptcy declaration. Fraud for hiding assets from the court. Your husband has made some very serious mistakes. So what happens now? Now we build an airtight case. I'm going to bring in a blockchain analyst, someone who can testify to the authenticity of this evidence in court. We're going to document every transaction, every purchase, every lie. And when we have everything in order, we're going to present it at the asset disclosure hearing." "He doesn't know I have any of this," I said. "What if he finds out? What if he moves the money?" Sandra smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "That's why we're going to get a temporary restraining order on his assets before he knows what hit him. The moment we file, his accounts get frozen. The crypto gets frozen. He won't be able to move a dime." I felt something loosen in my chest, the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. "When is the hearing?" 6 weeks. That gives us time to prepare, to make sure every piece of evidence is unimpeachable, to anticipate his defense and prepare our counters. "What do I do until then?" Sandra leaned forward, her expression serious. "You act normal. You don't give him any indication that you know anything. When he calls to discuss logistics, you're polite and distant. When you see him in public, you don't react. You are a woman going through a difficult divorce, nothing more. Can you do that?" I thought about all the years I'd spent not seeing what was right in front of me, all the lies I'd accepted, the doubts I'd suppressed, the instincts I'd ignored. Now, I was going to use those same skills against him. "I can do that," I said. The next 6 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work. I came home. I cleaned the house that would soon be sold. I responded to Marcus's occasional texts about logistics with 3-word answers. I smiled when I had to smile and nodded when I had to nod. And every night after the sun went down, I sat with Sandra's team and prepared for war. The blockchain analyst was a man named David Chen, a former software engineer who'd become an expert witness in cryptocurrency cases. He walked us through the evidence step by step, showing how each transaction could be traced to real-world purchases, how the wallet could be definitively linked to Marcus, how the timing of the bankruptcy filing lined up perfectly with a series of large cash-outs. Monica, the private investigator, kept digging into Veronica. She found the apartment downtown that Marcus was paying for, a luxury 2-bedroom with a view of the skyline. She found photos of them together at restaurants, on boats, at resorts. She built a timeline of their relationship that stretched back 3 years, which meant Marcus had been with her almost as long as he'd been planning his exit from our marriage. Each piece of evidence was like a brick in a wall I was building around him, a wall he wouldn't see until it was too late to escape. The morning of the hearing, I woke at 5 a.m. without needing an alarm. The sky outside my window was the deep gray of early dawn, the trees still black silhouettes against the coming light. I dressed carefully, charcoal blazer, cream silk blouse, black pants with a subtle pinstripe, low heels that I could stand in comfortably for hours, small gold earrings my grandmother had given me, the grandmother who'd always told me I was stronger than I knew. I looked at myself in the mirror. 40 years old, locks twisted back from my face, makeup minimal but professional. I didn't look like a woman seeking revenge. I looked like a woman seeking justice. Sandra met me outside the courthouse, a massive limestone building with columns and stairs that projected the weight of law and consequence. She was carrying a leather briefcase stuffed with documents. David Chen stood beside her, his own bag bulging with laptop and cables. "How are you feeling?" Sandra asked. "Ready," I said. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." We walked up those stone steps together, and I didn't look back. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I'd imagined, wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, rows of benches that looked like church pews. The judge's bench dominated the front of the room, raised above everything else like a throne. Marcus was already there. He sat at the defense table in his navy suit, his hair freshly cut, his expression relaxed and confident. His lawyer, a bald man named Peterson, who specialized in helping rich men stay rich, was shuffling papers beside him. They looked like they expected this to be a formality. Marcus glanced up when I entered. Our eyes met briefly. He smiled, that same easy, charming smile he'd used on me for 15 years. I didn't smile back. I just walked to the plaintiff's table and took my seat. The hearing began with the usual formalities. The judge, a tired-looking man named Morrison, who'd clearly seen every kind of divorce dispute, read through the preliminary matters. Both sides confirmed their presence. The court reporter started typing. Then Peterson stood up to present Marcus's case. He was good, I'll give him that. He painted a picture of a man who'd taken risks and lost, who'd tried his best to save a failing business, who'd been honest with the court about his circumstances. He presented the bankruptcy documents with appropriate solemnity. He suggested that my claims for alimony were unreasonable given Marcus's unfortunate financial situation. Sandra sat beside me, listening, her face blank. She didn't object. She didn't interrupt. She just waited. When Peterson finished, there was a brief pause. "Your Honor," Sandra said, rising from her seat, "before we proceed with the asset disclosure hearing, I'd like to submit additional evidence into the record." Judge Morrison looked up from his notes. "What evidence is this, Counselor?" "Documentation of previously undisclosed assets, Your Honor, specifically cryptocurrency holdings valued at approximately $2.3 million. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched Marcus's face as the words registered, watched the confusion, then the calculation, then the fear. His lawyer leaned over to whisper something, but Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring at me. For the first time in 18 months, maybe for the first time ever, he was seeing me as something other than the wife he'd manipulated. He was seeing me as a threat. What followed was a systematic demolition of every lie Marcus had told. Sandra presented the seed phrase, explaining how I'd found it in a storage unit that Marcus had claimed to have closed years ago. She presented the wallet balance, with screenshots showing the current value of his holdings. She brought David Chen to the stand, who explained in clear, simple terms how cryptocurrency worked and how each transaction could be traced. And then she showed the spending, the Tesla, the vacations, the apartment downtown, and the jewelry. $60,000 in diamonds and gold, purchased for a woman who was not Marcus's wife. "Your Honor," Sandra said, her voice steady and cold, "the respondent claimed bankruptcy while simultaneously living a lifestyle of extreme luxury. He claimed he had nothing to give while spending tens of thousands of dollars on gifts for his girlfriend. He lied under oath. He committed perjury, and he attempted to defraud this court." Marcus's lawyer tried to object. Chain of custody, technical complexity, privacy concerns. Judge Morrison shut him down each time. "Mr. Thompson," the judge said finally, his voice hard, "would you care to explain these transactions?" Marcus stood. His lawyer grabbed his arm, trying to stop him, but Marcus shook him off. He was desperate now. I could see it in the way he held himself, the controlled posture cracking, the easy smile nowhere to be found. "Your Honor, I can explain. The cryptocurrency, it's volatile. The value changes constantly. I didn't think of it as real money. I didn't know I had to disclose." "You didn't think $2.3 million was real money?" It's complicated. The blockchain technology. I didn't understand the disclosure requirements." "Mr. Thompson," Judge Morrison's voice was ice, "you are a financial professional. You signed a disclosure statement under oath, claiming you had no significant assets. You presented bankruptcy documents to this court. You asked to be relieved of all alimony obligations. Are you now telling me that all of that was false?" Marcus's mouth opened and closed. His lawyer had his head in his hands. "I may have made some errors," Marcus said weakly. "Unintentional errors." "Unintentional." The judge practically spat the word. "You unintentionally hid $2.3 million. You unintentionally bought a Tesla and took luxury vacations. You unintentionally spent $60,000 on jewelry for your girlfriend while claiming you were broke. The courtroom was silent. Mr. Thompson, I want to be very clear. What you have done constitutes perjury. It constitutes fraud. It constitutes contempt of this court. And it may constitute criminal activity that I will be referring to the district attorney's office for investigation. Marcus sat down. His face was gray. The confident man who'd walked into this courtroom an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone who'd finally realized the walls were closing in. This hearing is adjourned for today, Judge Morrison continued. I will issue my ruling on asset division within 30 days. But I want to state for the record, Mrs. Thompson will be receiving a significant portion of those hidden assets, and Mr. Thompson will be facing consequences. The gavel came down. The court reporter stopped typing, and I sat there at the plaintiff's table, feeling something I'd almost forgotten existed. Victory. The ruling came 3 weeks later. Sandra called me with the news while I was making dinner, something I'd started doing again now that I was living for myself instead of waiting for Marcus to come home. 60%, she said, nearly $1.4 million, plus back alimony for the years he claimed he couldn't pay, plus penalties for fraud. I set down the spoon I'd been stirring with. Outside my window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And criminal charges? Referred to the DA. His lawyer is already trying to negotiate a plea deal, but there will be consequences. This is going on his permanent record. His career is over. I thanked her. I hung up. I stood in my kitchen as the light faded, letting the reality sink in. I had won. Not just the money, though that was substantial. I had won back my own narrative. For 15 years, Marcus had been writing my story, casting me as the trusting wife, the naive partner, the woman who didn't need to understand the finances because her husband had it all under control. He'd been wrong. He'd underestimated me. And now he was paying the price. The celebration happened that weekend. Keisha came over with 2 bottles of champagne, the good stuff, the kind we could never afford in our 20s, and we sat on my back porch watching the stars come out. You did it, she said, clinking her glass against mine. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected her. I couldn't have done any of this without you. She smiled, that fierce, loyal smile I remembered from our college days. I just pointed you in the right direction. You did the hard work. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping champagne, listening to the crickets. What happens now? Keisha asked eventually. What does Danielle do with $1.4 million and a brand new life? I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. At first, the money had seemed abstract, numbers on a legal document, not real wealth I could touch and use. But as the reality settled in, the possibilities began to open up. First, I'm paying off this house, I said. No more mortgage, it's mine. Smart. Then I'm investing, building something for the future, the kind of financial security I never had when I was married. Also smart. And then, I paused, looking up at the stars. I'm taking a trip, a real trip, not a vacation approved by someone else's budget. There's a place in Iceland where you can see the northern lights from a hot spring. I've always wanted to go. Keisha laughed. Look at you, living your best life. I'm trying, I said. It's been so long since I knew what that looked like. I'm still figuring it out. "You'll figure it out," she said. "You always do." The news about Marcus trickled in over the following months. He took a plea deal, 6 months probation, community service, a fine that ate into the money he'd tried to hide. His name showed up in financial publications as a cautionary tale. His company parted ways with him within weeks of the ruling going public. And Veronica? She left him within a month of the settlement. The moment the money dried up, she was gone. According to mutual acquaintances, she didn't even bother to break up with him properly, just sent a text saying she needed to focus on herself and that she wished him well. She kept the jewelry, though. I suppose that was fair. Marcus tried to reach out to me once, about 6 months after everything was finished. An email to my work address. I don't know how he got it, with a long, rambling apology. I read it twice. He talked about not understanding what he'd had, about learning from his mistakes, about hoping I could find it in my heart to forgive him someday. I deleted it without responding. An apology changes nothing. It doesn't give back the years of lies. It doesn't heal the wound of betrayal. It doesn't return the trust that was broken so thoroughly I still have trouble trusting anyone. I don't need his apology. I have something better. I have my life back. The money is invested now, not all of it, but most of it, in a diversified portfolio that should grow steadily over time. I learned a lot about finance in the past 2 years, more than I ever would have learned staying married to a man who wanted me dependent. The house is mine. I've repainted the rooms in colors I love, deep blue in the bedroom, sage green in the kitchen. I've ripped out the furniture Marcus chose and replaced it with things that speak to who I am. I did take that trip to Iceland. I sat in a geothermal pool while the northern lights danced overhead, green and purple and luminous against the dark sky. I was completely alone, thousands of miles from everyone who knew me. And I felt more complete than I had in years. I started volunteering with a nonprofit that helps women going through high-conflict divorces. I couldn't give everyone Sandra's phone number, but I could share what I'd learned. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Don't let anyone make you feel small. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my marriage. People I'd let drift away because Marcus always wanted me home, always needed me for something, never quite approved of my spending time with people he didn't control. Those friendships are growing again, like plants that were starved for water and finally getting what they need. And I'm learning new things, taking classes, pursuing interests that Marcus would have dismissed as impractical. I've discovered that impractical and joyful often mean the same thing. I'm 40 years old. If I'm lucky, I have another 40 years ahead of me. And I'm not going to spend them being small, being careful, being defined by someone else's lies. I'm going to live. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. The lessons I learned the hard way, so maybe you don't have to. First, and most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I spent years explaining away red flags because I wanted to believe in my marriage. I made excuses for inconsistencies. I convinced myself that the loving person I'd married couldn't possibly be lying to me. I was wrong. And by the time I admitted it to myself, years had been lost. Your gut knows things your brain wants to deny. Listen to it. Second, financial literacy is not optional. It's survival. I let Marcus handle all our finances because he was the expert and I didn't want to interfere. That ignorance made me vulnerable. It allowed him to build an entire secret life with money I didn't know existed. Learn how money works. Understand bank accounts and credit cards and investments. Know the difference between assets and debts. And yes, learn enough about cryptocurrency to know if someone might be using it to hide from you. Knowledge is power. Ignorance is danger. Third, document everything. Every suspicious receipt, Every inconsistent story, every transaction that doesn't add up. Photograph it, screenshot it, store it somewhere secure. I found that seed phrase because I'd been paying attention for years, cataloging small inconsistencies that eventually revealed a massive fraud. If I'd been less careful, less thorough, less willing to write things down, Marcus might have gotten away with everything. Fourth, find your people. I could not have done this alone. Keisha understood financial fraud. Sandra knew how to fight in court. Monica knew how to find the evidence we needed. Each of them brought skills I didn't have, support I desperately needed. You cannot survive a crisis in isolation. Find the people who will stand with you, who will fight alongside you, who will believe you when the world tells you you're wrong. Finally, know that you are stronger than you realize. I spent 15 years believing that Marcus was the capable one, the smart one, the one who had everything figured out. I accepted his narrative because it was easier than writing my own. That was my biggest mistake, because the capability was always there, in me. The intelligence, the determination. I just didn't know it until I was forced to find it. You have reserves of strength you haven't discovered yet. I hope you never have to discover them the way I did. But if you do, know that they're there. Know that you can survive what feels unsurvivable. Know that you can fight when fighting seems impossible. Know that you can win. The last time I visited the courthouse was 6 months after the final ruling. Not for any legal reason. I just wanted to see it again. I stood on the steps, looking up at those limestone columns, the same steps I'd climbed on the morning that changed everything, my heart pounding, my case in my lawyer's briefcase. The same building where I'd watched Marcus's empire of lies collapse around him. It looked different now, smaller maybe, less imposing. Just a building where people come to seek justice, sometimes finding it, sometimes not. I found it, not because I was lucky, because I did the work. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years before, the one who'd found that hidden credit card and chosen to look away, the one who'd known something was wrong and convinced herself she was imagining things. She felt like a stranger to me now. I wasn't angry at her anymore. She'd done the best she could with what she knew, but I was glad she was gone. The woman standing on those courthouse steps was someone new, stronger, clearer, more certain of who she was and what she deserved. I turned away from the building and walked back to my car. The sun was warm on my face. The leaves on the nearby trees were just starting to turn, the first hints of gold and orange among the green. A new season was beginning, and so was my new life. If you've ever caught someone in a financial lie, how did you find out? Tell me in the comments. And if this story helped you, if you learned something about protecting yourself, about trusting your instincts, about fighting back, subscribe to Karma's Echo for more, because karma always finds a way.